First of all, let me just start in terms of talking about traveling New Zealand. It may be a little unusual for an ambassador, but I have thought the most important part of my job is meeting the people of New Zealand. Others would say an ambassador's job is meet the leaders and talk to the leaders, and that's the job. But I really felt the most important part of the job is to learn and understand the culture, the traditions, the norms, and how this democracy really worked and whether or not it was working. And I can tell you they got a very, very vital democracy that's doing very well on the world stage. This is at the very beginning. I thought I was going to go to New Zealand, present my credentials to Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. And as soon as I let the embassy know that, they said, and the embassy personnel, they said, oh, no, you present your credentials to the sovereign. And I said, well, the sovereign? I said, this is a country. They said, well, this is a country where king and queen are a part of it. There's a governor general that represents the king and the queen on the ground. And when I arrived, you wait for a little bit to present your credentials to the governor general, Cindy Kiro. And she is the person that accepts an ambassador's credentials. My credentials, every ambassador to New Zealand, she in person accepts our credentials. But I was fascinated about a couple of things. First of all, to get to know the leaders like this and what role they would play. I was very excited in terms of wanting to learn Maori, Te Reo Maori. And here is the first Maori woman Governor General. So I was very excited to meet her. I've obviously got a big smile on my face, and she was tremendously generous. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful occasion and a great beginning in New Zealand. This is Chatham Islands. It's in the newly built marae of the Moriori. There are people in there who go way, way back with the history of the Chatham Islands, the history of Moriori, the history of Maori, and the history of all the New Zealanders that are there. So we had a wonderful week. A lot of people would say, oh, why would you go to a place with only 600 people for a week? Well, you want to try to get to know them, and it's spread out, and it takes a long time. We hiked outside for many hours, and I learned a lot. It's a wonderful, wonderful group of islands, and we had some great experiences there. The one other thing I want to mention is that what I went over for is a science conference, which went on for 4 days, and we looked at what was taking us way back in history. 150 years ago, the United States and New Zealand partnered on science, and that's the science of what's called the transit of Venus. We put money into having it researched, and a wonderful New Zealand professor, David Johnson, traveled to the East Coast in Washington, researched all the files and read the diaries and published a wonderful little book about that 150 years of science partnership between New Zealand and the United States of America. So it was a great visit, and seeing that science conference take place where the local people would come out and listen to all the New Zealand scientists come over and talk about their fields. The thing I'm the proudest of is the fact that when the President of the United States, Joe Biden, called all the Pacific Islands together and said, let's have a summit in Washington about the Blue Pacific. And it came to our attention that the United States had not recognized Niue or Cook Islands as countries and as states. The more I heard about it, I said, we've got to send a cable to Washington and say, you've got to recognize them because they have to participate in this summit. And we got it out of the State Department, and the president made the decision, we're going to recognize them. And they came and participated in the first historic summit that's been had in the White House on that. And this is a picture of all of us looking at the glory of all the sea life there in the Cook Islands, the dances. I'm up there on the stage trying to follow one of the dancers. I don't do a very good job dancing, but it looks like kind of a good imitation. Who knows? The thing about Niue that I really loved, other than talking about some of the experiences, is the way their system works with such a few number of people. Niue has taken the attitude that when you work for Niue, especially working for Niue in the government, you work for 4 days for your salary, but the 5th day is what they call a community day. And they go out in the community and do community work on that 5th day. And to me, it's just a wonderful example. With so few people, everybody has to wear so many hats. And we would run into a group, we would meet, and the next thing you know, we'd see them doing another job. In this photo, I was headed to meet the Prime Minister. I didn't know that I was going to have a fish snack on the way. We went down to look at the beach. My wife, Jill, loves to walk on the beach. And we found this boatman that had come in and he'd been fishing and he had raw fish. And I love the fish, so I started asking him all sorts of questions about the fish and what he was doing with it. And he said, well, you want to taste some good fish? He says, have a bite. He obviously told me that that's the way he was going to eat it, and so I thought, well, good. And I had a good bite of raw fish, knowing that it was very fresh. The remarkable thing to see in these smaller islands is the artistry and how local people really focus on how it was done anciently and how are we going to do it today. And the wonderful woman I was meeting with there, I think her name was Jasmine, and she was teaching young people, so going way back in history, the patterns from their culture and showing them how to carry those traditions forward. So it was a very special day. I ended up buying a shirt, wonderful island shirt. Jasmine went through one of our embassy programs, learned how to be a very good business person, and ends up having a thriving business there on the island, selling clothing, which she does all of it herself. This is a wonderful example of U.S. government programs to preserve cultures of areas. This is a photograph in Samoa. Stephen is a grantee. This is a guy that really believes in Samoan culture and preserving it and the traditions of Samoa, what many people call Fa'a Samoa, the Samoan way of life. And one of the things to know is that Samoa, everybody speaks Samoan. The culture is very strong, and it's a vital, strong country that really cares about its past. This structure is the way Samoans would build an old-time house, and it had almost gone out of existence, and so a grant was given when it came in, somebody said, we'll reproduce a house like this, and this will help them explain their culture to others and make a real contribution to what's going on. And so Stephen did that. They got so excited about it, I think he took a group up to Japan and did the same thing. And on the side, he's a hell of a tennis player and a pickleball player. He introduced me to pickleball. The way he plays pickleball, it's a lot like squash. You're moving around the court all over the place. It's very energetic, it's very aerobic. And so now when I go back to the United States, I'm actually going to keep playing tennis, but I'm also, I think, going to play some pickleball. One of the very, very special things about the Pacific Islands is they've retained much of their natural world, and they really love it, and they've created parks, they've created trails, they've tried to do everything they can to get people in touch with nature. And part of that is their tradition of, and by their starting with the indigenous people and starting with others that have come afterwards, really, really caring deeply about the land we're on, what the land gives us, and how we should be maintaining that connection. Because if we don't maintain that connection, we're going to lose it all. We're frying the earth right now, and we need more parks and more carbon absorbing plants out there. Plants, soil, everything. The ocean absorbs most of the greenhouse gases, but we need all of it in order to make progress on this. But it's wonderful to see people that care about the earth, care about the connection. It's kind of in my DNA because that's the way my dad grew up on a little farm in St. John's, Arizona. He'd get up early in the morning and milk the cows, and he helped with the plowing, he helped with cutting the hay, and he kind of passed that on to all of us from when we were very young. I've always done this in my public career, is trying to explain democracy at the level that young people get excited about it. And this school in Lower Hutt, these were students who really cared about politics, about government, maybe even being interested in going into government. And it was just very special to share with them some of the simplest kinds of ideas. And I would always be a little reluctant, but sometimes I would encourage them, you can challenge your teachers, and the teachers would be standing there, and I'd get a little worried, what would they think? I was just trying to show them, if you feel strongly about something and want to make it better, if you speak up and you get involved and you're polite and you articulate your argument carefully and forcefully, you can maybe make a change. And that's the wonderful thing about democracy. That's what I always tried to celebrate with the young people. The wonderful thing about this job is that when a major event happens that involves the United States, in New Zealand or in the other countries where I'm the ambassador, we're directly involved in helping it go well. And in this case, I have a wonderful embassy staff, and they really kind of think through everything. How's the best way to present things, how to be sensitive to New Zealand culture, to indigenous culture. And here the second gentleman, we've never had a second gentleman. He's the first second gentleman. He was Kamala Harris's husband, and she was the vice president, so second gentleman. And one of the things that he decided to do is travel in the Pacific with a message with regard to a number of things, but one was about athletic excellence. And here you have the women of the United States, our team, that was a championship team. It had won more women's World Cups than any other team in the world. Here he was talking to them about excellence, about what athletics meant. They were also talking with him about what it meant to them. And so it was a very special moment that's captured right there between the American team and the second gentleman. This is a wonderful visit we had, an incredible woman. Her name is Deb Haaland. She ends up being the very first Native American Secretary of Interior. She's working in a department which has the main responsibilities for Native Americans throughout the United States. There are about 585 plus tribes. Those tribes are all their land held in trust through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Secretary of Interior is tremendously important to Indigenous people. And so the president's move to put a Native American for the first time as Secretary of the Interior was a wonderful thing. And she's a very good friend of mine. She's from New Mexico. She ran into, in one of her early visits, the foreign minister, Nanaia Mahuta, was coming to Washington as I was coming to New Zealand, and Foreign Minister Mahuta said to Secretary Haaland, "You better come out to New Zealand." And I heard about that, and I called Deb on the phone and said, "You got an invitation from her, but you also have an invitation from me, and we'll take care of you, and you really do have to come because you will be an inspiration that will resonate for a long time here." And she had a great visit, and you can see the big smile. She was smiling like that the whole time. Now this is Secretary Blinken. This was the Porphyry. One of the funny stories was the staff of the Secretary of State. They try to get absolutely every detail down. They were very worried because it was flu season and post-COVID, and everybody's worried. And they'd heard about the hongi, and they said, we got to work this out so that he doesn't have to do this. We're very worried about his health and everything else. And it ended up, I think he probably ended up doing a couple of hongis over time, but this is the greeting that the Indigenous people of New Zealand do. What everybody needs to understand is in an ancient way, they were warrior people, and there was a whole introduction to try to prevent fighting each other. And the introduction was done in a way where you say, this is who we are, and we're pretty tough, but we're laying down our weapons, and if you pick them up peacefully, then we'll all get along, and we're welcomed into the marae, and our arms are put around you, and now you're part of our family. And so it's a wonderful tradition. Early when you see it, I saw it for the first time before I came to New Zealand on the rugby field in Washington, D.C., when the All Blacks played the American Eagles. Our rugby team smashed them. There was 90 points difference in the game. But they do the haka at the beginning. And when you look at them doing the haka, you say, these are some tough dudes. And so I'm sure the secretary, seeing this for the first time, thought, whoa, what am I getting myself in for here? But he realized after seeing it's really a peaceful greeting more than anything, and it has huge significance, and it's just very special to witness one of these things and be a part of it. Back to the Cook Islands. One of the great things that we're able to do when we represent a country is if a big event occurs there, like the Pacific Island Forum. These are all the islands of the Pacific getting together in a collective group where they talk things out. The expression, I believe, is talanoa. We talk through things, we agree to talk through until we get a consensus. And in this case, the forum was being held in the Cook Islands, and we were able to get Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield to come from the United Nations. She's a member of the President's Cabinet, ambassador to the United Nations, and a totally experienced, wonderful Foreign Service person of decades and decades. And she made a huge impression on all the countries that participated in the Pacific Island Forum. There's the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Winston Peters. I've got a big smile on my face because he always makes me laugh. He's got some great stories. The thing about Winston Peters is he's tremendously generous with his time. There's almost no place in New Zealand that you go where it surprises you that Winston Peters is going to be there, because he seems to be everywhere, and he's really everywhere around the world and around the Pacific. The guy travels more than I did as a member of Congress, but he's doing long distances in countries where we were doing in between states. So guy's got a lot of perseverance, a lot of strength, and he's a good leader. I don't want to brag too much. I know it's the tall poppy syndrome. You know, I've learned over here, we don't brag about each other. You know, you're not supposed to say Winston Peters is one of the greatest leaders of all time. New Zealanders would be offended by that. So any bragging that I've done, I just want to let you know it's just my loquaciousness, my enthusiasm about things. And Americans are kind of like that. And sometimes I've told people that, and they say, you know, we need a little more of what you all have as Americans, that kind of bragging. So anyway, I don't know how that all washes out, but I've always had a lot of fun. One of the things that I'm going to miss the most is the people in this photograph, because we have an absolutely remarkable team here at the embassy. We have what I call the heart and soul of our operation, which is our local employees who are Kiwis, who are grounded here in New Zealand history and tradition, and speak truth to power to us. And roughly 2/3 of our employees are local employees. And then we have a wonderful team of foreign service officers in Samoa, very small group there, but in Auckland and also in Wellington. And these career people serve all over the world, and they interrupt their family life, they interrupt their children's schooling, and they're there to serve the country. So you combine all that together, and it's just a very special team. It almost makes you want to cry how you come and you're able to help be a part of building the team and growing the team and pulling people together. So I'm going to miss that an awful lot. And I'm practicing my Maori here a little bit. Forgive me, but he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's the people, folks. And you sometimes have an expression where what should you really focus on when you think about New Zealand? It's the people, stupid. It's the people.